People argue about foreign crises like they are moral debates. Who is right? Who is wrong? Who broke the law? But that usually not how power actually works. If you watch the news, these movements look chaotic. It feels like everything is happening at once: statements, sanctions, threat, force. But underneath the noise, they are often a pattern. In reality, it's usually the same few moves repeated in different countries under different leaders. So, in this video, I'm not telling you what to think about anyone's case. I'll be giving you the tool to analyze any future crisis on your own. If you understand these tools, headlines stop feeling confusing. Let's start with the first and the most important concept: recognition authority. This is simply about who the US government officially treats as the real government of a country. That decision doesn't come from the UN. It doesn't require Congress. It's an executive decision. And once recognition shifts, everything else starts moving: embassies, bank accounts, treaties, courts. That's why power often begins before the troops move. The second concept is emergency power. When a president declares a national emergency, it's not just a symbolic language. It quietly unlocks a large set of legal authorities: sanctions, asset freezes, trade bans, without waiting for the Congress. The word emergency sounds dramatic, but legally, it's more like flipping a switch. And once it's flipped, there is no automatic expiration. Third, sanctions statecraft. Sanctions aren't just punishment, they are system. They target banking, insurance, shipping, legitimacy, and they work largely through the private actors. Companies pull out early, banks overcomply. Long before violence, system starts breaking. That's why sanctions reshape behavior even when the leaders stay in power. Fourth is a distinction most people miss: use of force versus war. President uses force all the time: strikes, raids, special operation, without declaring a war. War legally requires congressional authorization. Force lives in a gray zone, and most modern conflicts stay in that gray zone forever. Fifth, occupation versus temporary control. This is where the language matters. Occupation creates legal responsibility. Temporary control sounds limited, clean, reversible. Governments deliberately blur this line to avoid obligations. Same actions, different words, very different consequences. And finally, legitimacy vacuum. This happens when no authority is universally accepted as sovereign, and that vacuum itself becomes leverage. Chaos becomes justification. Instability becomes a reason to step in. Once you see how these pieces fit together, something changes. Because when you see step 3 happens, step 4 and step 5 becomes predictable. And you will start spotting this pattern again and again. These situations do not unfold randomly. They usually follow a sequence. First, delegitimize. Recognition is questioned. Language shifts. Then, isolate. Sanctions expand. Financial access collapses. Then, declare emergency. Authority consolidates. Speed replaces debate. Then, limited force. Framed as necessary, contained, justified. And finally, control without ownership. Stabilization, temporary administration, not occupation officially. This isn't chaos, it's a sequence. So, where does the international law fit into this? Under the UN Charter, the use of force is legal with two exceptions: self defense or Security Council authorization. So, why doesn't the UN stop powerful states? Because enforcement depends on power. Vetoes block action, the UN has no army, and legality is often argued after event unfolds. International law exists, but enforcement follows power. In theory, can any country do this? Yes. In practical, no. Smaller states lack financial leverage. They risk retaliation, isolation, escalation. But every precedent weakens the system. And once the norm erodes, more actors try similar justifications. That's how the global rule decays. What about courts and Congress? The Supreme Court almost never intervenes in foreign policy. It treats this question as political, not legal. Congress technically controls war declarations. In reality, it reacts after the fact. The strongest constraint on power isn't law, it's political cost. So, if you want to analyze any future crisis, ask six questions. Who is recognized as legitimate? Has any emergency been declared? Are sanctions symbolic or systematic? Is force being used without war authorization? Is control described as temporary? And who is actually enforcing international law? If you can answer this, you understand the game better than most headlines.